I want to talk about what the coalition should be talking about now, and that is cost of living, interest rates, the economy, and where our country is headed. What's the budget going to look like this year? Joining me live now is Judo Bank Chief Economic Advisor and EQ Economics Managing Director, Warren Hogan. Warren, thanks so much for your time. We have spoken about interest rates, of course, for many, many months. What you think the RBA should or should have been doing, but now what the government has in terms of the levers it has to pull. There's a lot of focus now on the level of government spending and how much pressure that is putting in inflation. How would you explain it to the Australian public?
Yeah, good morning, Laura. Thanks for having me on the show. Yeah, it's really important because we now have clear evidence over the last 6 months or so, and really confirmed last week with those strong inflation numbers, that we don't have our policy settings right. And what I mean by that is our broad monetary policy, where the interest rate is, and then our fiscal policy and what governments, not just the federal government, but state governments are doing with their budgets. We had inflation very high, and it came down, as it did everywhere around the world, on the back of tighter monetary policy, that is higher rates. But here in Australia, we didn't raise rates as much as everyone else in the world. We were doing an experiment to see if we could get rid of this inflation without a recession or without rising unemployment. We now have confirmation that experiment did not work because it did not get its primary task achieved, which was to get inflation back to target of 2.5%. Inflation never went to 2.5% in a core or underlying sense. It bottomed out last year and is now rising again, and looks like it's a full percentage point above the RBA's target. So that tells us we didn't tighten policy up enough. It's too loose. There's too much money in the economy, however you want to describe it. It's good news in the sense that the economy is growing, people have got jobs, but it's inflationary, and that's catching up with people in terms of cost of living. It'll undermine the economy's performance. So the question from here is, what is the best way to deal with this? Because we have to get inflation. That's the that's the absolute priority. And my view is we need the RBA to reverse the rate cuts of last year. They were a mistake. There's no two ways about it. And then if they can get that done by May, over the next 3 meetings, then the governments of Australia need to tighten up fiscal policy just a little bit. They just need to stop spending growing. They don't need to cut willfully and widely. They just need to be restrained. And maybe that'll get the job done. But if the governments of Australia do nothing, I think the RBA is going to have to take the cash rate above where it was a year ago, above 4.35, and most likely towards 5, and put this economy at risk of recession. They have to do that, though, if the governments of Australia will not act.
Do you think we're going to see then, well, I know what you hope, that we at least see a rate cut tomorrow. So you talking, when you say reversing the rate hike tomorrow, when you say reversing the rate cuts of last year, so you think there should be 3 hikes this year?
I think there should be 3 hikes at the next 3 meetings. I think the decision to reverse the rate cuts of last year should be taken today and tomorrow at the RBA board meeting. They don't have to do it in one hit, but they as a group need to sit down and say, look, strategically, we didn't get inflation under control with a 4.35% cash rate a year ago. So we've got to get back to there because it's moving higher and away from their target. There's no sort of mucking around with this. This is too important to the well-being of the Australian people, the stability of our economy. They've got to take this seriously. And although they don't need to raise rates by 75 basis points tomorrow, they need to raise rates and send a signal and have an agreement amongst themselves that unless something really bad happens in the economy or overseas, we're going to take the cash rate back to 4.35. They can then buy themselves some time to watch the economy and see what the governments of Australia do with their fiscal policy. This is exactly what I'd be saying right now if I was standing in that boardroom where the board members are currently meeting, and I think it's the right way to go about it.
If you were Treasurer Warren Hogan, what would you do?
Well, if I was a treasurer facing an election in 2 years, more than 2 years, and I was a treasurer who might want to actually be going for the Prime Minister's job, I would be encouraging the RBA to get on with their job. I would just stop this fantasy, because this idea that we can pull off some magic trick that no one else in the world can do is just not, it's like an open experiment with the Australian people, and the Australian people are not to be experimented with. But the most important thing is they all need to face up to the fact it hasn't worked. And so if I was Treasurer, I think that the results we're seeing in these polls with One Nation and what we're seeing with Trump, the Australian people want their leaders to be honest with them, to be honest with themselves. And the facts of the matter are we need to tighten up policy. And if I was from a political point of view, you'd be getting on with that right away. You give yourself the most chance you have of getting the hard medicine out of the way early and then making the case to the Australian people in 2 years that the worst is behind us. But it's quite clear now that they haven't got the job done, the RBA or the government. And if they try and deny that fact, I think it's going to cost them politically.
OK, still keeping your Treasurer's hat on then, Treasurer Hogan. What would you say if you were Jim Chalmers tomorrow? Because obviously you spoke to my colleague Kieran Gilbert. He says, well, it's not government spending. Things are out of control. He said that last week. He rightly pointed to a few things, I've got to say. But obviously he wants to downplay the government spending side of things. I mean, would you just level with the Australian public?
Yeah, well, I mean, the Treasurer has got to do it within his context. I would have the luxury of a blank page in front of me.
Yeah.
But he could tilt it, just saying we need to show some constraint, and that he'd be encouraging other state governments to do that. That we do really need to ensure that we get inflation down as a priority. Because I think this is the other issue, is that we need to be seen in our community and importantly overseas, that inflation control is taken seriously in this country. Because I think there are some real question marks over that. Certainly the record is not good. We have seen inflation average 4.5% since they started raising rates and no sign of it being anywhere near target. And of course, the overall price levels increased by 25% since the start of COVID. This is not what Australia had been doing for the previous 30 years as one of the world's most successful inflation targeting central banks and one of the most successful economies. So I think they just need to be honest about their intentions here. And of course, governments do initially benefit from inflation through bracket creep and other things, but now you can see inflation is catching up with the governments of Australia through the costs of their programs. And this is a big part of why their budgets are blowing out. And so we should all understand that inflation is the devil when it comes to the operation of an economy, and we have got to get rid of it. And the longer we leave it, the worse the economic downturn we're going to have to experience. Now, we missed our opportunity in 24 to do it. If we miss this opportunity now, who knows how much of a severe economic disruption we're going to experience down the track. So you've just got to get on with it, and he's just got to tilt the conversation towards restraint. And I think the Australian people will lap it up. It's going to be tricky from their own base, but successful politicians are the ones who manage their own base well, not attack the others successfully.
Indeed. Warren, great to talk to you. I really appreciate it today. We'll speak soon.